Let's move on to Maria Salazar down in Miami.
Let's take a trip down the coast.
Give some credit to this local reporter here.
From New York City to Miami, where Republican Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar was grilled by a local CBS reporter about something that is actually very common here in Washington, D.C. Watch this clip.
Last month, you were at FIU and you presented a check for $650,000 to help small businesses at FIU. But you voted against the bill that gave the money that you then signed a check for and handed and had a photo op, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023, right? You voted against that bill.
Right now, you have to give me more details, but I do know that every time I have an opportunity to bring money to my constituents, I do so. I just did $400,000. But look,
well, you voted against the Chips and Science Act, right?
Listen, right now I need to ask my staff. But what do we look at the $40 million that I have brought to this community? Aren't you proud of me? Aren't you proud of the $40 million that I brought? Aren't you proud that I wrote the Dignity Act? Haven't I? Let's talk about the Americas Act.
Wait a second. Let me 1 second.
Tell me.
The money that you talk about, the $40 million that you bring back to the district, sometimes that money comes from bills that you voted against. You voted against the CHIPS Act, and yet you praise the fact that the South Florida Climate Resilience Tech Hub is going to be started in Miami, right? You voted against the infrastructure bill, and you talk about all the money that comes back to the airport. So at the same time that you're taking credit for the money that you bring back to the district, in Washington, you're voting against these projects on party line votes.
Listen, that was, I think, last cycle. I cannot really remember right now, but let's look at the Americas Act, which is what I'm going to, which is what I would like.
You don't want to explain why you voted against things.
I mean, right now, and I'm not trying to be a politician, there's so many bills that I've introduced that I know that many of them
these are bills that you voted against.
That I understand. But it's okay. Sometimes I vote and sometimes I don't. But let's look at the positive.
I'm not trying to be a politician. Yeah. I also love the line, I need to talk to my
I like her
staff.
body language. She's just leaned back. She's chill the whole time. She's like, whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes I vote for it. Sometimes I don't. Who cares? The money's here.
Okay, so there's a lot to...
What you bugging me about it for?
Yeah, again, like if you weren't watching this, the clip itself, this was a pretty viral clip, but her body language, Ren, you're right. She just doesn't care because... Actually, what a lot of people don't remember about Maria Elvira Salazar is she had a really successful career as a journalist that she parlayed into her run for Congress. Let's
roll some of her and Fidel here.
Yeah, so we have this VO. She was one of the few reporters ever to do an on-camera interview with Fidel Castro, one of the few American reporters
adversarial,
ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, to do, and she did, yes, and you can see if you're watching, you can see a very young Maria Elvira Salazar.
So Miami 80s there.
Yeah, Miami 80s, grilling Fidel Castro, and she's very proud of that interview. I've heard her talk about it before.
Fidel, you're taking credit for all of this infrastructure spending when you voted against it.
You voted against it. Actually, that's very funny. So, Rain, you've been covering this longer than I have. This is the oldest trick in the book: voting against the spending, and then later touting it in your district.
The Republicans did it a ton during Obama's stimulus too. Like universally opposed his stimulus, but then, of course, when there's a ribbon cutting, you can't keep a politician away from that because everybody likes when new stuff gets built.
Oh yeah, and again, like actually some politicians have in different cases legitimate arguments here. Not that I agree with the arguments, but what they'll say is with the child tax credit that was passed in the Trump tax bill in 2017, Democrats negotiated on that in the Senate side. And so they might say, I helped get the child tax credit, even though they voted against the bill because they were involved in the backroom negotiations, pushing for the child tax credit. And it's possible that Maria Elvira Salazar was pushing this pork to get into a bill she knew she would ultimately vote against, just trying to make it, and this was the excuse a lot during the Obama years, trying to make an inevitable bad bill as good as it possibly can be for your constituents. I think if that was what happened, though, we probably would have heard her use that argument.
Yeah, I love that she's like, I don't know how I voted on that.
She doesn't care.
That was last cycle.
That was last cycle.
Come on, get out of here.
That was last cycle.
Don't you want to hear about the bill I've introduced that's going nowhere? Can't we just talk about that? Can't we just talk about that instead?
She flipped it around. Yeah. Aren't you proud of this bill?
It's called the Americas Bill. You against the Americas Bill?
Yes.
I mean, come on. What's wrong with you?
Yes.
She'll probably win in a romp, right?
I think her original win was pretty close, but once you're in, it's easier to stay in. The other thing is,
And that area is trending pretty red.
She's also very friendly with leadership. So she was kind of elected in a cycle where there were a lot of like upstart Trumpy MAGA people, and I think she weirdly got lumped in with that because she was anti-socialist, running in a heavily Cuban district, and so she talked a lot about the kind of red meat socialism issue. But she's pretty friendly with leadership, and not exactly as red meat as a lot of people would have her would peg her. And that friendly with leadership part matters a lot in the re-election part because that determines where some of the money goes.
Yeah. She's going to get that $400,000. FIU is going to get that big check.
Yeah, FIU is going to get that big check. We should see if she'll come on the show and talk to us about that, actually, because she would be an interesting guest. She, as a former journalist, she knows what she's doing on TV. Yeah. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And, Ryan Grimm, Castro, what's the difference, really?
There you go.
It's a fine line between Ryan Grimm and Fidel Castro.
There you go.
As I always say.
Good writer, right? Fidel?
Sure, we'll give him that.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.